Great, thank you so much for having me tonight. I haven't been to this park in quite a while since I moved up north to Madison area, so I'm really glad to be able to come back. So thank you again for having me. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my background, why we wanted to create Sheeco, and what our services are, how to make an event more green, and that you can even implement in your own events, in your personal events. And then some examples of some of the events that we've done, so you can see how it looks in action. And I'm happy to have a conversation, so if you want to interrupt me, please do, and I can answer some questions. But I've got some slides, I'm used to doing slide presentations, but happy to go off script. So I'm Andrew, and I'm actually a Nashville native. I grew up in Sylvan Park. We talked about Produce Place today, so I'm happy to be from Nashville. I love the city, occupying Cherokee land, and I'm happy to have been in the city so long and to see it change. So I wanted to tell you about our company. So first you'll see that it's myself and also Nicole Brose is my co-owner. She works out of Seattle. She was in Nashville for a long time and just recently moved. And we are a women and queer-owned sustainable events and consulting company. And we mainly work on events, but we have some other projects also. And our goal is just to simplify this so that all events in Nashville can become more sustainable to support the initiatives of the entire city and of our whole planet. So my background is I went to Hume-Fogg High School, love Hume-Fogg, and I studied AP environmental science there, and that's what really kicked off my love for the environment. Of course, we all have a similar story of how we got in touch with our environment, and so I was really fortunate to speak at a Tennessee Women in Green meeting, and so that picture on the top is actually of my AP environmental science teacher, Barbara Allen, who had happened to attend that meeting when I spoke, which was really great and such a cool, close circle experience for me. She was an incredible teacher. Teachers make all the difference, Karen.
Were you the same? That's right. Were you the same year as Laura?
No, Laura also she went to Hume-Fogg, but she was younger than me. Yeah. And then I went to UT Chattanooga and studied environmental science. I wanted to stay in the Tennessee area, and they have an incredible environmental science program. And so I really enjoyed my time there, and you'll see a picture of me as a camp counselor down there at the bottom. We were an outdoors camp. We wanted to show any upcoming freshmen how beautiful Chattanooga is, how beautiful our landscape is. We took them out kayaking, canoeing, rock climbing, hiking. We wanted to show them how beautiful it is and how lucky they were to be there. And then I came back to Nashville and went to Lipscomb University to study sustainable practices. I wanted to learn more about how humans interact with the environment, how we can protect the environment, really more so on sustainability than just being out in the field in environmental science. And so I attended Lipscomb University, got my master's. And then after that, I actually worked at Vanderbilt for about 6 years, but in the meantime, doing grant review at Vanderbilt, I was on the board of Urban Green Lab, a local nonprofit here, and they teach communities how to live sustainably, so they mainly do education programming. And while I was on the board, we built this mobile laboratory that went around town and visited schools, and they were exhibits on the inside around sustainable living, and we were a field trip for students all around Nashville to learn about sustainability. It was mainly for middle school and high school. And that was a wonderful experience to build that and take it all around town. And then when I joined staff in 2017, we had an opportunity to work with TDEC to create the state's first standards-aligned curriculum for sustainability. And it was piloted in 6th grade. So we started a middle school curriculum where teachers could actually implement it in the classroom, already tied to their standards, to introduce students to sustainable practices. And so we trained over 220 teachers, including Karen, and she spoke at one of our trainings as well. In about 47 schools, it may have been more than that as well, and I got to go back to Chattanooga and do a training there also, which was really nice. So after doing education in sustainability, I was really craving to move beyond the educational piece. It's of course really important to have a foundational understanding of sustainability, but I was really craving doing the action and being on the ground. And so a project that I am so excited to have done, and I couldn't find my pictures from Warner except for the one. And that's my niece Millie in that picture.
And that's Nina Johnson and Tina Cohen, and what was her name? She was so sweet. The girl that was with you that worked.
Brittany,
yeah.
Yeah, Brittany O'Connell, who's her parents are part of the temple.
Okay.
Big circle, yeah. So I got to do a project there, 2 projects at Urban Green Lab that really heightened my interest in food waste. I studied food systems at Lipscomb, and I really started to get that hands-on experience of measuring food waste in MPS schools. We did a pilot in 3 schools. One of them was Westmead Elementary, and we also did H.G. Hill Middle and Warner Elementary. And so And so I just spoke earlier, I met Westmead in that picture. So
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Was that food waste post-consumer or
Yes.
pre-consumer?
post, it was the students' plate waste.
Okay.
So specifically, it was a project with World Wildlife Fund. It was across 9 cities, and they wanted to get a better understanding of how much students were wasting from their plate. And so, hi.
Come on in. There's some beverages back here.
I'm hoping you found some.
Is this Grace?
Yes.
Hi.
This is the infamous
We
Grace.
heard a lot about you.
I got to see briefly on Tuesday, so great job speaking of.
Thank you. Oh, sweet. All right, we'll have to do that.
Okay, so we did some plate waste audits at 3 schools. Isaac Litton actually ended up doing it after the pilot because they were so interested. But what we did is we showed the students what pieces on their plate were compostable, which was mainly the food waste as well as napkins, and then how to separate their trays. So you'll see these students from Westmead going down the line that Karen so wonderfully created to be able to capture food that was uneaten and able to be rescued. So whole apples, whole bananas, packaged food and fruit, and then be able to separate the rest of their plate into compostables and trash. And so that was a really incredible experience, getting to show that education in action. And what was really awesome is after doing 7 audits in those 3 schools, the students' plate waste reduced by 36% just by doing the audits. So the students were, just by paying attention to it and just by seeing how much was on their plate, they were actually able to finish more of their lunch, which is of course the goal for them to consume the nutritious food that they're being served. And they actually, in other studies around the country with World Wildlife Fund, they proved that the students were more hydrated as well, drinking more milk and more water. So it's just great to heighten their awareness, bring them more into their bodies and into center at lunch to try to think more about the food on their plate. And so we also created the Food Waste Initiative at Urban Green Lab, which was connecting the dots between large food waste producers like festivals and the Music City Center and big organizations with organizations that can rescue that food. So we were trying to connect them. And so that really heightened my desire to keep doing that. And you'll see at the bottom, I'm sure you're aware, 40% of food is wasted in the US, around that amount, while 1 in 6 Tennessee children face food insecurity. So,
And can I say something nice about you?
No.
If it hadn't been for Dion, we would not have been able to move to composting, which is, she's such a good leader. When we had these team meetings and everything, she was so good at this, that in the end, we wound up being able to use the leftover money from Kroger's grant. And our kids were already saving food and redirecting, so they were ready for it. And we figured out, we composted 2 tons of food, even though that wasn't a whole year.
Yeah.
And that was just the compost piece. And that's because of you.
Oh, it's because of you. Thank you. Yeah, it was such a fun project, and it really just made me realize that I wanted to go beyond training and actually get to be there in person. Because I barely got to visit schools in my role. I was mainly training teachers, but when I got to visit Westmead, it was just so wonderful to see it happening in real time. So because of that, Nicole and I decided that we really wanted to move towards more hands-on action in our careers, and so we created Sheeco, which stands for She, Eco. We are women-owned. And so the problem is that, as you know, Nashville is generally behind other big cities, other cities similar to us in terms of sustainable practices, although it's really improving lately, and we have a lot of great initiatives happening in the city, and all these great new corporations coming that have that in mind. And so there's a lot of traction happening, but generally we have a long way to go. And recently I saw a statistic that in 2020, Nashvillians wasted about 9.4 pounds per person per day, which is double the national average. And so we're trying to figure out why that is. I don't know if it's more single-use things happening during COVID and policies and restrictions around that. If it's tourism, if it's, who knows why we waste so much more, but we need to really bring that in. So, and with our limited infrastructure in terms of recycling and composting, it means most of that is going to landfill. So we really want to do a better job, and we knew that individuals do have an impact, but also we know that big companies, big festivals, big events really have a larger impact on the city than just us as individuals. And so the opportunity is, we wanted to take my food system experience, Nicole's experience. She used to work at country music television, and so she had a great background in country music events, how they work. She was able to create a lot of zero waste events there, and she wanted to do more. So we combined those, and we want to improve the sustainability of events, large and small, weddings, festivals, small shows, all types of things. But our big challenge is that event producers and venues have a hard time understanding why that's important, why that's helpful, if they see it as a cost. And so what we want to show them is that it can be good for their employees, it can be good for their attendees, makes them look good, it contributes to the goals of Nashville City to reduce our environmental impact, and can just be good PR, and it's a good opportunity for them. So that's our challenge, as well as during COVID, having a lot of single-use plastics and materials come back into the procedure has really been a big challenge too.
The word trash, what does that encompass?
It's all waste going to landfill. So yeah, one thing I wanted to clarify about that is if that included construction and demolition. I don't think it does, because it should be consumer waste.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what do you consider zero waste? Is it 80%, 90%, 70%?
It's a tricky term. Yeah, it's a tricky term. So zero waste means the maximum amount of waste is being recycled, whether that's food recycling or rescued or recycled. That is possible. So you can put a number on it if you want to say 90 to 95 is your goal, but typically it's every material that can be rescued or recycled is rescued or recycled, which is generally 90-ish% of material. There's a lot of loose plastics and things like that can't be, but yeah. Okay, so you all are very familiar with sustainability, but as we were thinking about what a sustainable event is, most people think about waste, as we were saying. So most people think about trash and recycling. And we wanted to really encompass more than that as well, and have people think about how it impacts not only the environmental impact beyond waste, but also ensuring that the people involved in that event, the people in the community, the vendors that they're using are equitably sourced, and ensuring they're being paid well, and all of those types of things. So every product we source for an event, every vendor we select, we really try to look at sustainability from top to bottom in those decisions, as well as, of course, making it economically viable for the client, because they have to ensure that we're not too expensive. So we have to find the right solutions for them. So beyond just the waste, we want to look at multiple things at an event. So you could look at this and think about how this might impact your next big event that you throw, the next wedding you throw, or even looking at a big, huge festival like CMA Festival here in Nashville. So I'll start, of course, with rescue and recycling. I didn't put waste here because what we really try to focus on is what can be rescued and recycled. And so generally, at events, there's all types of different events, whether they're outside big festivals or they're inside at a venue that already has a system in place. It's super variable. So you really just have to look at what is in place, what types of materials are going to be at the event. Mostly it's food and drink is really what you're looking at. But it could also be all types of other things. So when we are working on an event, we want to make sure everything they're sourcing can either be recycled or composted or rescued or reused. So most event producers are looking at the cheapest item, they're looking at what they can get on time, and they're looking at what they can put their brand on often. And so for us, we want to open up our mind a little bit to think about, would it be better in the long run to use reusables? Would it be better to have your brand on something that will last longer rather than single use? So those types of conversations. And luckily, we have commercial composters in town, so that's really helpful. And they typically at this point have been able to take on as many events as are requested. So they're not maxed out yet, which is really good.
So are those organizations actually making money?
The composters?
Yeah.
I don't know their financials, but Compost Company is the compost facility that's out in Nashville City, and they also do hauling. And then Compost Nashville is a hauling company that mainly does homes and offices, but can also do events. I don't know their finances, but I would assume Compost Company's been around for about 10 years now. So I would think they are, but I'm not sure.
Is that where the compost at the convenience centers goes to?
Yes, Compost Company.
I have to admit, I've been extremely impressed with that composting. The bins are always clean, it's always real.
Yeah.
I've
They have a pretty high-tech system going on. They use filters and heat and all types of things to get the compost broken down quickly, so that probably helps. So yeah, those compost hauling includes fees. So that is something that's an additional fee that we are proposing to the producer. We might say, hey, you really should have composting at your event, but it's gonna cost $200 or something like that.
You know, if you can't convince people about composting, there's some videos online where they compost cows.
Oh my gosh.
An entire cow is composted. So I figured if a cow can be composted, we ought to be able to compost a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so that's the kind of thing that is an additional fee.
So cynic.
So something else that we try to talk with our clients about, especially if it's an outdoor event, is those gas generators. So we did a really big outdoor event I'm going to talk about later. And generally with food trucks and any kind of outdoor event, you need electricity, and typically gas generators are the cheapest, but with fuel prices going up, who knows? And so there are some renewable solar generators available in the area. And so those are quiet, which is another really nice benefit. So that's where we bring in those other pieces of sustainability, where we say, you know, your festival goers and your concert goers are going to have less noise pollution. You're creating that less noise pollution in the environment that day. And so, you know, they're quieter, they don't smell of gasoline, those kind of things. They're heavy, and they're you know, you gotta find them, but it's an option.
And the sun has to be shining.
That's true, sun has to be shining. They do have charged batteries that last pretty long, and it depends on what you're fueling. So it's not always an option, but it's a nice offset even if you use both, so.
They're so expensive.
The solar generators?
Yeah.
They're expensive to buy. There's a company called Rent Solar,
Okay.
and they partner with a nonprofit called, I can't think of it right now, but they provide solar generators in emergencies and things like hurricanes. And so the for-profit is Rent Solar, and you can rent them, which is a lot more cost effective. Yeah, so that's what we use for ours. But so another thing is decor and signage. That's another piece that creates a ton of waste. And so again, you know, we try to advocate for using reusable signage, which can be difficult with branding and depending on what you need, but also signage and decor that might be compostable, or you may be able to donate it afterwards. Some of our signage we donate to Turnip Green for reuse, so they can use the vinyl or whatever the sign is made out of. And the decor, we typically use local flower shops that compost the flowers after or donate them. So those are the kind of questions we have for vendors when we're looking at what we're going to use for the event. And I'll have some examples a little bit later.
Why do people come to you for the event?
Sorry?
Why do people come to you for the event?
Because, so generally it's an event producer or an event planner, and if it's an event planner, their client might be, oh, I really want this event to be sustainable. If it's a wedding, as an example, like I'm a green bride, I want it to be sustainable, and the planner might they don't have the time, and they don't have the network of already knowing who to go to, so they kind of put it on us so that we can take care of it for them. We also provide on-site services that I'll talk about, so we can be there to manage it all, because it's an additional piece sometimes that the planner's not prepared for. Same thing with the producers, they don't focus on that. And so they might, and typically, you know, to be upfront, we are small and still growing, so we're always looking for the marketing piece. That's kind of something that we're working on right now. So.
And did you guys do the training of the volunteers at Earth Day?
Yeah, we did. So another thing is we had volunteers at Earth Day standing at the waste bins, helping people sort, and our job was to train all of the volunteers that day on what goes where, supervise it.
They did a great job.
Yeah,
I was there. They did awesome.
well, those volunteers were pretty well educated on that
Yes.
stuff anyway, but it was great to
It was
just ensure, that everything was in the right place. So. Okay, so quickly, some other pieces are catering, of course. So not only kind of what they're serving the catering on, but where the food is sourced, the practices of the catering company, all of those pieces, and if they already do food rescue themselves. So a local company called Bacon and Caviar, they already donate the majority of any of their leftover food, and donating catering can be really difficult because it's been out, it's already prepared food, so I'll talk a little bit about that later too. And then community-based, I just wanted to throw that in there to say that kind of, as I mentioned, all of our vendors that we look at, we try to ensure are sourced equitably, are diverse, are local. We try to really include the community's resources for that event specifically. So when we did that event out in Jackson, we sourced all of our local vendors kind of in that area. And then carbon offsetting is a great option for larger events like festivals. We're trying to move those event producers towards carbon offsetting because there's no possible way that you can make an event zero emissions. And so we partner with a company called Clearloop Corporation, which is local to the Southeast, and they were just acquired by Silicon Ranch, but they still operate by themselves. It was founded by Governor Bredesen. And so they are offsetting by actually building solar farms in areas like Jackson, Tennessee. And so they're not, sort of carbon offsetting can be challenging in terms of calculating it, ensuring it's actually absorbing carbon. So that's why we like Clearloop, because they're local and they're actually creating solar energy. So here's some examples of some things that we work on. So you'll see the pictures on the top left are from Nashville Pride last weekend. And there was a trash can full of recyclables that could have been captured. And then you'll see the recycling bin at CMA Fest right there with the bag. Had a ton of little plastic cups from a sampler right next door. So they were sampling things in tiny plastic cups that are not accepted by that recycling hauler. So I was seeing people throw them in there thinking they're doing the right thing and knowing that that whole bag's gonna end up in the landfill. So not really good proper signage, not understanding what vendors accept. And then on the right at CMA Fest, you'll see that there were great Metro recycling bins next to the trash can, but then throughout the festival, there were also other trash cans that didn't have a recycling bin next to it. And that means everything in that bin is contaminated and has recyclables that are going to end up in the landfill. So you want to ensure you pair those as much as you can. Bottom left, you'll see a lot of plastic plates and forks. That's what we see. They're cheaper than compostables typically, but it's just really upsetting when you have a lot of food that you could recycle in composting, but the plate is not compostable. So then you have to find a system for scraping that plate. It's really hard. And then bottom right, you see that generator. We're trying to avoid using gas generators as much as we can.
I should say, they did a study at UT about whether you have somebody manning the recycling station or not. It was 70% wrong
Yeah.
if you didn't have anybody. It was 90% correct if you did have somebody else.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. And I'm sure in your recycling speech you heard the other day, you might have heard that, Metro's recycling needs to be under 10% contaminated, and we've been around 30%. So if you can really get that contamination under 10%, it's really vital. So manning the stations is something we also do. So we can either, gather volunteers or actually pay part-time staff to come help us monitor at events, which can really help. I'm gonna try to speed up, I guess, because it's 7:30.
But we started late. So.
That's what I'm saying, we're not going anywhere.
You have to be out here by 9 o'clock.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm here. Okay, so this is what we share with our clients to try to convince them that they want to take on these initiatives. And I'm not going to read all of these, but you'll see that the majority of people, and typically we're quoting millennials here because we're talking about a business case for sustainability and their employees. So millennials, 70% of millennials say that a company's sustainability policies will affect if they want to stay in that company. 77% of overall workers expect a company to provide those environmental activities. And then the majority of millennials say that their job is more fulfilling when employers provide those opportunities. So these large event producers, they are employing a ton of young people. Now Gen Z, not even millennials, but now Gen Z as well, who are even more really expecting there to be environmental policies. So they can have better retainment of their employees when they have those initiatives.
Diana, is it okay if I send your slides to people in the group?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, just so you know, I can send everybody their slides.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And these stats aren't cited on these slides, as you'll see, but I can always, if you ask me, I can send you the sources. And then the business case for the events is that, again, the majority of millennials will pay more money on a product if they believe it to be sustainable. 66% of consumers consider the environment before making that purchase. So if your festival is a green certified festival, there may be people more willing to come or more willing to purchase your product. And then this is a really big one for me. 59% of American event producers reported that they're prioritizing the environment and sustainability in their plans. And that is a 555% increase from the year before.
Wow.
It used to be, it's either, I think it was 6%, whatever that math comes out to. So it jumped enormously, I think, through COVID and just as the younger Gen Z employees coming into these companies expecting it. So events are really starting to turn over where this is the norm. And Nashville, again, is kind of a little bit behind. So we created Sheeco, and we have these 4 really important values that we wanted to create that were important enough for us to create this company and kind of leave what we were doing before. And so we have these on our website in more detail, but we wanted to really be authentic. And when I say that millennials will pay more money for something that's green, we want to make sure it's not greenwashing. So we want to ensure that when we work with a company, whatever we are presenting to them and recommending is truly sustainable. It's truly something that is reducing the impact on the environment and it is supporting our community and our society. And so we really do a lot of research into those pieces before we recommend them. And we both have advanced degrees in sustainability, which we really lean on to ensure that that's accurate. And then we want to be inclusive. So everyone's welcome and included in the sustainability space. We want to ensure that it's approachable, so there's something for everyone. And so we want to expand what sustainability means. We want to expand these practices to all communities and all festivals and events in Nashville. And of course, we really care a lot about justice. And so, you know, as you know, sustainability space, environmental space is predominantly white. We are another white-led environmental sustainability group. We recognize that. And so we really want to give back to and support organizations and people and employees that are from diverse backgrounds or from marginalized communities that have been historically excluded from this work. And so one small thing we're doing as we're growing is donating 1% of our revenue to nonprofits that support women and other marginalized groups. And then we hope in the future when we can hire people that we really are taking into account our hiring practices and making sure those are equitable. Okay, I've talked a lot about what we do, so I'll kind of skim through our services, but these are our 3 services. One is venue and office consulting, so we can just consult with you. We don't have to do the whole event if you already have an event producer or event planner. We can just work with you to ensure that the venue or your office is more sustainable by researching those products, presenting to you a proposal for changes in your operations. And so we can even work on things like a zero waste break room, even just employee engagement activities, volunteer activities. We can just help any company in a venue or an office become more sustainable in those ways. And then what I talked about a lot today is an individual event consulting. So obviously doing everything I mentioned by making your event sustainable. We typically try to do the consulting because we're a small company, but if they do need the actual full planning services and on-site production, we can do that as well if we have the capacity. And then of course the on-site event management, that's what I mean. So if we have capacity, we can actually be there to manage those initiatives, hire those volunteers or staff to man the stations, identify those opportunities for donation and make sure that happens, and then communicate those requirements to all the staff and the vendors on site. Because sometimes you make those plans and then you get there and it all falls apart. Yeah.
I'm just curious about the bottom one,
Yeah.
measure report results. Is there some body that kind of certifies what sustainability is and tracks
Yeah.
that kind of data? It seems like it's awful young to
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
that sure.
Well, so when we're on site, we measure and we attempt to measure everything we do. So whether if it's waste diversion, we're definitely measuring all of the waste and composting and donating materials. And then if it's other things like the solar generators, that company helps us estimate what that offsetting impact was. And then we also use green event certification guidelines. So there's a national organization and an international one that we're a membership of called Muse. And so we try to align with their regulations to ensure that we're hitting all the pieces. So what we provide is a report afterward, a snapshot of the impact from that event.
Do you do any assessment of people at the event at all?
Like interviews?
Yeah.
Or we haven't done that yet. Yeah, that would be great. We get some great kind of anecdotal things as we're working, and some good testimonials afterward, but we haven't done like a study or a systemized way of capturing them. Yeah. And then lastly, we do discussions. So speeches like this, hands-on webinars, whether that's virtual or in person. We do some webinars for AARP right now on a variety of topics, whether that's composting, reducing food waste in the kitchen, how to host a sustainable event, those types of things. So we're happy to do those speaking engagements anytime, and Nicole can do those remotely from Seattle, which is really nice. And so here are a few projects that we've done so you can actually see what they look like. So Clearloop, this is one of my favorite ones. So Clearloop, I mentioned them before, they're the solar offsetting company, carbon offsetting company. And they did a groundbreaking on their first project in Jackson, Tennessee in last September. And so it was out in the middle of a field and there was nothing there. And so we had to bring everything in, which was a really nice opportunity to ensure that every piece really was sustainable. So you'll see kind of in the middle, we had composting bins, recycling bins, and it was as zero waste as possible. I'll show you our data after this. On the right, you'll see our decor. So we were able to rent linenless tables, so things like barrels and really nice farm tables that did not require linens, therefore the linens didn't have to be washed or dry cleaned, which to us is a benefit. And then we used a local flower shop, Lillian's Florals, and we used a lot of yellow, that's their brand color. And they brought in some sunflowers, and all of their flowers and their foam in their arrangements is compostable, and they compost all of their leftovers, which is really nice. And then we had a virtual reality experience, and so there are plastic versions of that and cardboard versions of that, so we chose the cardboard version. In the middle there, you'll see her looking at that virtual reality of what that solar farm was gonna look like once it was built, which was a really nice interactive thing to do. And then the bottom is one of my favorites. You'll see that's Laura Zapata, the CEO, and her partner, and then their photo wall that we had custom created by East Tennessee Cedar. That was a wood wall that people could take photos, in front of, and that they did their speech in front of. And so it was really beautiful. It will last a really long time. It doesn't require stain or paint, and it was sourced locally. And I just really love that because we went through a lot of different designs, and and that was custom made for them with their logo to ensure that they could use it at every single event. It's big and heavy, but they can use it at every event. So, and then on the bottom left, you'll see that's the solar generator. The top left is, it was really hot that time in September, and we wanted to have an ice snow cone truck, and Kona Ice, actually, their trucks are run on solar. So they have solar panels on the top, and so that's why we chose them, because they use renewable energy. We also had local catering brought in from Jackson, Tennessee, and a local cookie bakery shop, and so tried to support that community while we were there.
So that's a truck that runs, a refrigerated truck that runs all on solar?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know enough about snow cones, I guess it's blocks of ice that they shave, right? So I think that part stays pretty cold. I don't know how much of it has to be refrigerated, but I'm sure it did. So you'll see almost 95% of the event waste was diverted from landfill, which was really nice. So all of the food was composted, all of the drinks were in cans. We used canned water, and we used Maypop water, you'll see in that picture. And that's a local canned water company. And so we provided this waste summary for them afterward. That was the majority of what they were interested in, was the diversion, as well as those other beautiful pieces, so. Okay, so Warner Music, we did back to the music, we got to do a music event with Warner Music. Dan and Shay, if you're familiar with that country duo, they had an album release VIP party at the Parthenon. And so that was about 300-400 people, and it was a catered event inside the Parthenon, a bar and food, and there was a lot of waste coming out of there. And so we were able to only send to landfill about 12.5% of the waste coming out of there. It's higher than we wanted it to be, but we weren't able to consult with them before the event. This type of event was we came to the event and we did the waste diversion and we left. So we didn't get to consult with them beforehand. So that's an example of, if we bring us in a few weeks before, we can actually help you make sure that you source everything sustainably. But you'll see our setup down there, and so all the caterers and the waiters would come out with the catering, and they would separate the materials into those bins.
So I have a question. How are you weighing? So you're weighing this waste? You have a weighing machine that you're.
Oh, we literally just use this bathroom scale. So once these bags are full, we weigh ourselves, and then we weigh ourselves holding the bag. It is not. That's what we did at the food waste audits. So it is not complicated.
I still have that scale.
Do you? You can have it.
Well, I don't need it anymore, but I mean, I weighed she taught me to weigh everything, so I weighed everything. And even afterwards, when we were doing the composting, and then I decided that was such a good practice.
So it's not hard. I mean, it's a lot of weighing.
It takes a lot of time.
It takes a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, but this event was done with 2 people. It was me and an assistant.
Okay.
So it doesn't take a lot of people. It just takes
labor.
A really good system. Yeah, and just kind of, and those bags are big. I mean, they don't fill up too quickly, so you have some time. It just depends on how large the event is. So, I mean, a thing like a festival would be a much different process.
Yeah.
So. And then my most favorite event we just did a couple weeks ago was the Nashville Pride Festival. We were able to do a food rescue project with them. So we submitted to them doing composting, food rescue, and an audit for next year. And because they had already passed their budget, they said, we really are interested in the food rescue first. So we're gonna do that first and then look at next year. And so our goals were, of course, to rescue the food from VIP, staff, and backstage catering, and then donate that food to mission-aligned nonprofits in Nashville. And that mission-aligned part is really important because as you know, Nashville Pride is an LGBTQIA+ organization. We wanted to ensure that whoever we were donating this food to was serving equitably into the community and wasn't excluding anyone in that community. And so our methods were that we worked with the organizers and the vendors to ensure we knew what was coming, how much food was coming, what type of food, how long was it going to be on the table, was it packaged, cold, hot, all those questions. And then to identify those organizations. So there's luckily so many wonderful organizations in town that will accept food. It's hard when it's prepared and so late at night and on the weekend. So that's really the limiting factor, is who can take food on the weekend and store it. And so we did all that research, made those connections, worked within the community to find those orgs, and then we managed those on-site procedures. So we were there the whole time and worked with those caterers to say, hey, when are you gonna stop serving? We're gonna be here 10 minutes before, we're gonna grab it, get it off the line, and get it to an organization within 15 minutes so that we could keep it at temp. And then we, of course, measured the impact. So we measured all that food, and we wanted to make sure we could brag about it. So that's my partner, Chelsea, carrying the wagon full of catering. And so here were the results. We were able to rescue 312 pounds of food. So it's a 2-day festival with over 90,000 people. It was enormous. Luckily, most of the patrons were visiting food trucks, and they don't typically have a lot of food waste. They keep a lot of their ingredients for the next meal. So we were working mainly within the VIP catering. And so using nice, helpful calculators, we were able to kind of extrapolate that would be around 260 meals, and that we were able to avoid 169 pounds of carbon emission equivalent because that food is not going to landfill and it's actually being consumed, as well as 142,000 gallons of water because the inherent water that it takes to grow that food. So we were able to, it really is a staggering number when you look at it, and you know, I hope those are accurate, but those are the best calculators we have right now. And then we were able to donate that food to 3 organizations. And so I'm going to tell you about those. So first, we partnered with Nashville Launchpad, and they are the nonprofit partner of Nashville Pride. They support LGBTQ youth and provide housing for them, for those that are unhoused. And we, on Saturday night, went and took them 19 pounds of pizza. It was like 13 boxes of pizza, and we took them over to their apartments and provided them dinner that night, which was really nice. And then Monroe Harding is a foster care youth organization, and so they had multiple families, and we were able to donate 86 pounds of food to them. It was pizza as well as a bunch of catering that was things like barbecue skewers and chicken sandwiches and grilled corn and fresh fruit salad, like some really good healthy food that we could distribute to those families. And then Shower the People is kind of a somewhat new organization that's supporting our neighbors that are unhoused, and they provide mobile showers and laundry services, and they typically don't do food service, but that's why you have to have conversations, because we called Meredith and said, hey, can you feed people with prepared food? Like, we don't know what you really do. And she was like, absolutely. With pizzas, I'll take them straight to a camp and pass them out. And then with other prepared food, we have a huge refrigerator that we can keep it in and serve it the next day to our friends. So that was really helpful because they took 193 pounds of food.
Wow.
And the amount of catering on Sunday was incredible because it's the end of the festival, some people don't show up, and it was catered from Mockingbird, the Mockingbird restaurant, which was so good. And so it was a lot of really delicious food, barbecue pork and skewers and pasta salad and things like that. So they were able to share all of that. And what's really nice is to hear the impact that we have. I remember thinking before we started that I was like, oh, it didn't really seem like that much. We just dropped off the food. We didn't get to see the recipients as often. And so we got this quote from Monroe Harding saying, you know, the pizza donation was right on time. And then Meredith from Shower the People let us know I was actually able to take all the pizzas to an encampment tonight. I wish I had captured the looks of joy when I handed each person their own pizza, or was able to record the comments like, quote, "I don't think I'll wake up with hunger pains tonight." Either way, it was so appreciated. And I got that text later in the evening on Sunday when we had done the whole event, and I was like exhausted. And I remember telling my partner, I was like, man, I hope that they actually got to serve it, because you don't really know. And then I got that text and kind of just like broke down, because it's so nice that it actually helps people. So that's such a huge missed opportunity for festivals to not take this step to bring in people like us who can we already have the connections, we already have the network, we can make it happen. So, forgive me. So those were our partners for the Pride Festival. We used Society of St. Andrew volunteers, Jeannie Hunter, as Karen knows.
She's so good.
And Good Neighbor Festivals puts on Nashville Pride, so they were very helpful in bringing us in. And then the caterers were Bacon and Caviar on Mockingbird and Papa John's, and so that was a really rewarding project, and we hope to do more. And so I have another thank you slide. I don't know where it is, but it just says thank you for having me, and to join our newsletter where we'll share, every time we do an event, we'll share with you how it went and what happened. And our blog, we also share about the events and have other tips on how to be more sustainable in your events at home as well, not just a festival, but any kind of event you're throwing, like how to avoid confetti, balloons, those types of things.
Great, thank